Welcome to the latest episode of the Best of Cool Culture Corner, where we take a look back to some of the early episodes, some of the early interviews of Cool Culture Corner, the podcast, and talk about how some of those tips, ideas, theories, and so forth apply today in 2020 and beyond, in the days of COVID-19 pandemics and unrest and new normals and new economies and all of that other fun stuff. Hi, I'm Ken Bator, your host for the Best of Cool Culture Corner, as well as the podcast Cool Culture Corner. And the episode I want to revisit today is episode number 6, which was titled, Is Telework Telecrap? Now, I believe I recorded that in 2016 or 2017, and I'll play a snippet of it for you in just a little bit. And it had always been my idea, my thought, my feeling that we certainly there was a place for telework, people working from home for small and even large businesses. But I always felt that there was a need to have people in the same building, in the same place more often than not, for camaraderie, for those offside discussions, to really be able to tap into the expertise and enthusiasm of your best people in person. Obviously, that's changed a whole heck of a lot for a number of reasons due to the coronavirus. But before I get into my thoughts today in 2020 and beyond about telework, let's listen to a snippet of my little diatribe from a few years ago.
And our subject today is Telework Telecrap. I've worked with and I've talked to a number of businesses that allow their employees to work from home. And it creates some different challenges. In short, this is my personal opinion through observation about telework, that with a couple of special exceptions, I am not a fan, and the reason being for the two extremes. One, as many hard-nosed managers and executives would say, ones that are very, very black and white, would say that they don't like telework because of the trust issue, which is highly unfortunate and is probably a subject for another show, trusting our employees. But the reason they don't trust is not everybody is cut out to work from home. There are plenty of distractions. So if you have an employee it may be some issues. And I'm not necessarily talking about the worst of the worst, the ones that are on a performance improvement plan or that are 1 foot out the door after 16 and a half write-ups. But even the ones that are performing at an average or above average level, maybe they're satisfactory or just a little bit more. That has a tendency that I've seen to create an environment of possible unsatisfactory work from a satisfactory employee. Simply because it takes a lot of discipline to work from home. I will even admit from my own experience, I work from home quite a bit, and it takes specific focus and discipline for me to make sure that I'm not doing other tasks. It's so easy to say, well, I need to make ice in the fridge, so therefore, even subconsciously, I'm going to procrastinate this particular job or task. Or I've been meaning to fix that faucet. It'll only take me a half an hour or so let me get at it. Which distracts us from being both efficient and effective. I think that is a real distraction, and I think that anybody that doesn't have the discipline to work at home misses out on the interaction with the team in a workplace environment. I am a strong believer that those social interactions at the water cooler, at the coffee pot, wherever, on the way to the washroom, whatever, those conversations about the football game, those conversations about the latest Food Network Star episode or Walking Dead or whatever it is, creates some camaraderie and creates a little bit of trust and commonality so that when you need to work as a team, it becomes even easier. On the other end of the spectrum, when you have an outstanding employee, granted, you figure, all right, that individual does have the discipline and certainly can be trusted to work at home and deserves that benefit. And while I agree with all that, I always ask the question of, if you really do have an exemplary employee, why would you want to take them out of the environment of your team and culture? Because that individual is going to be an enhancement to that very team and culture. And you as a team, you as a manager or as executive, or better yet, a leader, won't have the access to not only that mind, but what's probably a really great attitude that you want there in person. You want to be able to just walk over to an office or a cubicle and a desk and just toss an idea off of them rather than picking up the phone or being on GoToMeeting. All of that technology, even the old technology of the phone and the new technology of Skype and FaceTime and all that, certainly does work and help. But I am a true believer that you miss out on not being face-to-face with people. I think that is a huge benefit. If you have a great employee, you have a great mind, why would you not want them in your culture, on your team, in person? In short, when thinking about telework, especially if you're a business that isn't doing it right now, I know that some businesses look at the cost factor of, should we, get an extra building, or should we rent or lease another floor or space versus just sending people home and allowing them to work from home. I know that there's a black and white cost to that, and it usually shows that from a financial standpoint, it's easier to let them work from home. But I would strongly have you consider looking at the possible loss of productivity from people working from home and the cost that may cost your organization.
Now, just to give a little bit more insight, I do truly believe that people can telework effectively. Obviously, we're forced to now to lower the risk for our employees. We don't want anybody to get COVID-19 by coming into our building and demanding people to come into a workspace. So I realize that, I understand it, and of course I embrace it. I still believe we are missing out on something. So I do believe that we've gotten a lot better at telework because we've had to. And I think one of the things that has made us better at it is using the technology wisely. For instance, many of you know that I am one of the category directors for Podcast Magazine. We have had tons of meetings, and we've built a team culture among all of the directors and other folks that do such a great job on that publication. But we have yet to meet in person for a Podcast Magazine meeting. Now, some of us met briefly during the New Media Summit back in March before the pandemic really caused shutdowns. But other than that, we have literally not had an in-person meeting of all of the directors to launch this magazine, to continue to move the magazine forward. And we've developed a great culture. And that's all been through Zoom. And I think one of the reasons that we have been able to do that is through this technology, we have been very engaging. We have been very supportive of each other. We've seen each other's faces. And I think that's one of the things moving forward, because I know that even when we get a vaccine, even when we're out of this pandemic, for a number of reasons, businesses will continue to not only allow but promote telework and use that, some businesses, as their primary foundation of operation. And I'll get to three reasons to do telework and what we should be looking for in the future. But I think one of the reasons that it's working right now is because of the technology that's available to us. Zoom, Skype, Microsoft Meetings or Microsoft Teams, I believe it is, GoToMeeting, WebEx. I think we're using the technology wisely, where we could see each other's faces, where we could have the one-off chats in the chat box, and use the technology to make a meeting almost as good as in person. Now, I think that we're still missing something, but unlike before when I did the episode, Telework Telecrap, and no, I don't think it's Telecrap anymore. And the reason I don't think it's Telecrap, one of the reasons is we're not using a darn telephone anymore. We're actually able to engage with each other. We could see each other's faces. We can tell each other's facial expressions, body language, and so forth that you can't do on a teleconference. So I think that that is one of the things that is making telework not telecrap. I think also because we're forced to be productive from home, we've found ways to not just be working at our kitchen table, but to find space and time to really focus on our profession, on our job. And I think that because there's a certain productivity expectation, because we're forced to work from home, I think that's also making telework not telecrap or as much telecrap anymore. I do think that we do miss a little bit. I think we miss those one-off conversations, those conversations after the meeting as people are walking out saying, you know what? I've got an idea for you. I like what you said. Why don't you come to my office? Some of that is happening a little bit with the so-called let's talk offline on this after the regular Zoom meeting is done. Maybe a phone call is taking place, or somebody is setting up a one-off Zoom meeting. I think that's happening. But I think we miss out on some of those impromptu conversations. So I still think that camaraderie, culture, being able to tap into people's enthusiasm, experience, brilliance is still better in person. But I will say that telework is no longer telecrap as long as we're really utilizing technology not as a replacement for meetings, but as an enhancement to connect with people, because we have to use it and we can tap into expertise of people that may be thousands of miles away. I certainly see that again in Podcast Magazine, where we have people from all over the country contributing to this project in this new initiative, fairly new initiative. It came out in January or February of this year. But a few things to think about. One, keep in mind that culture building and service standards specifically, I talk about it a ton in Cool Culture Corner and Branding the Experience. I don't think I talk about it enough in the best of Cool Culture Corner, but I still believe that service standards are the key to making the whole B plus C plus S formula really work. Again, for those of you that may not know the B plus C plus S formula, it's brand, culture, and strategy alignment. And I think that service standards still need to apply to these online meetings. For instance, one thing that is a pet peeve of mine, and I think really does detract from the team building that you can have using technology, whether it be Zoom or Microsoft Teams or WebEx or whatever it is that you choose to use. I think that there should be a requirement that you are on camera. Whether it's been podcast, magazine, or some other teams I've been involved in, you see a few people that don't have their camera on, and okay, if you're shy, you don't think you did your hair that day, if you were coming into work and going into a meeting, you'd put on a collared shirt, do your hair or something. So do the same for an online meeting. It don't be you wouldn't be on camera in an online meeting with your phone for 5 minutes doing this. Of course not. If you did, you'd probably be asked to leave, or it would just be rude. Don't do that on an online meeting. Be focused. You have the courtesy and the respect of everybody else there to be present for that online meeting. And for the love of God, don't turn off your camera and then start doing other work. If you're part of an online meeting for your business, then you have a responsibility to have a 100% focus as you would as an in-person meeting. I think that that should be in the service standards, because that's the experience for the team. That's the experience for all employees. I think that's how we can make this telework work, if you will, and not go back to telecrap. I've seen it a number of times, and I think that it's just plain rude and disrespectful when people have their camera off, and then all of a sudden in the conversation, somebody says, John, what do you think about that? And you hear crickets, and you just see that black screen, and you know that that person is there online, but they've obviously either are going to do other work or might even be in another darn room. Don't allow that to happen. I think we need to have very specific service standards that speak to the employee experience, even in an online setting. So if you don't take anything else from this particular episode, please take that one. So I will close this with that. Yes, my opinion has changed. We've learned as a society, and we've learned as businesses, for most of us to be able to do telework at a highly productive level, because we've been forced to. I think that going forward, not only do I not think anymore that telework is telecrap, you've kind of proved me wrong, COVID-19, because we've been able to do that, and we've been able to be very productive using these technological tools. But going forward as a business, we need to make sure that we're looking at three things on telework. One is the productivity. Can we keep the same level, or maybe even increase our productivity by continuing, maybe even expanding our telework in 2021 and beyond? Definitely a question you want to ask. Number two, what does that do for morale? And for the most part, I'm hearing that people enjoy teleworking, that it allows them to spend a little bit more time with their family, saves them money on gas, saves them money on dry cleaning, definitely saves them time sitting on the freeways in places like Los Angeles and New York and my hometown of Chicago. So if it's going to improve and increase morale, that's certainly a reason to take a very close look at telework, and not only keeping it, but maybe expanding it or going to it if you haven't done so already. But I can't think of a scenario where you would be going to telework and you haven't already done that in the midst of this pandemic. So productivity, morale, and the third is risk. And I think that this is not something that we talk about much on many of my podcasts, but we do need to take a look at risk. Both the obvious of that, the well-being of our employees should be extremely important to us. And if there's a risk of COVID-19, if there's a risk of something else, and we can lower that by having people work from home, and do so with the same or an increased productivity and morale, why would we not take a look at that? But also from obviously a legal standpoint, if we bring people back and something does take place, such as an outbreak, what does that do to us legally? Are we liable for that? And what does that open us up to? Definitely something we need to talk about. Definitely something you need to think about when you're looking at your telework strategy going forward. Not just simply the cost, because I know that a lot of times, and this is one of the things I said in that original podcast of Is Telework Telecrap, is that sometimes businesses make decisions solely or almost solely just on the bottom line. And that is, well, instead of renting out another floor, instead of getting a larger building, instead of possibly getting a second location, we could just send X number of people home and we could save on that cost. While certainly that's still part of your decision, it should not be, in my estimation, the leading piece of your decision making. So you got me. Telework is no longer telecrap, especially if you're using technology as a tool to continue to have a cool culture corner. And as always, I'm hoping that you have one at your unique business. Thanks for spending some time with me, and take care.
Now a word from our sponsor, Bator Training and Consulting. BTC is the creator of the B plus C plus S formula. Our clients that implement that formula increase their net income by 124% and grow their business by 17% on average. The best place to start working with Bator Training and Consulting is with our B plus C plus S audit. The service pinpoints issues as well as attributes of your business's unique brand, culture, and strategy. Learn more or sign up for a B plus C plus S audit at www.btcinc.net/BCS-audit.